All right, let's dive into it. So kind of taking a step back and just looking at this, this is one of the I find them kind of dreaded table style questions where it's not enough to match one value. You have to match three different values in this case, and sometimes they might have a whole table with many different values. And so I'll give you some strategies to kind of approach this, but kind of going systematically the whole entire approach to dealing with these questions, starting with the question itself. Which of the following are the most likely results of the catheterization? We don't really know much. We don't really know what kind of catheterization this is, but we know that we're going to be dealing with pulmonary measurements, presumably some kind of right heart cath, because these are the right heart cath would give you measurements for each of these metrics. All right, so we have that information to help us frame the question. So let's actually now circle back and read what the vignette is. So we have a 48-year-old man who presents to the emergency department with a 6-month history of dyspnea and daytime sleepiness. All right, so let's pause there. So again, starting with the epi, 48-year-old man, 6-month history of dyspnea and daytime sleepiness. Daytime sleepiness is a little bit of a buzzword, not 100% specific for any particular diagnosis, but it does conjure up a relatively specific differential diagnosis. His wife reports that he snores loudly during the night. All right, so this is getting interesting. And occasionally she thinks he stops breathing. So he has these episodes where he stops breathing, aka apneic episodes, while he's sleeping. And so you can presume he has an entity that's called sleep apnea. And this is a very classic vignette. Daytime sleepiness, snoring. There's a scoring guideline. It's called stop bang. And I think as we move through this, you're going to find that he meets a lot of the criteria. Initially, the patient only felt short of breath when he awoke during the night, but now he is having difficulty walking more than 2 blocks without having to stop to rest. His past medical history is significant for hypertension, hyperlipidemia, and childhood asthma. So that's interesting. We have a pretty strong, we feel comfortable saying that this patient has sleep apnea, but now they're throwing in asthma. They're saying that he has dyspnea even when he's awake. So these are kind of tricky distractors they're throwing in this vignette to try to lead us away from that diagnosis. And specifically, now that he's having these events during the day, we start worrying about the spectrum of OSA versus OHS, so obesity hypoventilation, which can cause hypercarbia, hypoxia during the day, not just at night. His current medications include lisinopril and atorva. Does not use tobacco, alcohol, or illicit drugs. Vitals. So I think there was a question earlier about memorizing vitals. What I would say is there aren't many things that you have to memorize the normal for, but vitals I would say is one of them. And so I would just go through and try to hold on to those pieces of information. So, this patient is afebrile, but he is hypertensive, which we knew. His pulse is not abnormal, 60-100 is normal, and his respirations are fine. His body mass index is 38. That's another one that I would know the limits for. So this would meet criteria for obese. And then based on initial echocardiogram findings, the patient is sent for a right heart cath. So now we have the story. And basically, we use the actual question itself. What are the results of the cath? To help frame how we're going to approach the question. We made the diagnosis, and now we can reframe the question itself and say which of the following would be the results of something you would see on right heart catheterization in a patient with OSA. And so the way I like to go through and do this is pick a column. It doesn't matter which column you start with, but pick a column, the one that you think you're going to know the answer to, and try to figure out rule out answers that don't match what you think should be the right answer for that column. So to give you an example, this patient with OSA, he's going to have hypoxia. Hypoxia is going to cause hypoxic vasoconstriction, and the hypoxic vasoconstriction will constrict his pulmonary arteries. Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. And then cause, and then going to cause an increase in pulmonary artery systolic pressure. And so on the basis of that, we can rule out any answer choice that doesn't have high for that. And so we can say that C and E are not going to be correct. And so after we've done that and ruled out those two answer choices, we're still not done because we have 3 answer choices now to choose from. So pick a second column and reiterate this process. So for the same reason that his PASP is going to be high, it's the same reason why his pulmonary vascular resistance is going to be high. It's that hypoxic vasoconstriction. And so we rule out normal for that as well. And that leaves us with A and B. So we're still not done. Sometimes you get lucky and you don't have to go through every column. By the time you get to the last column or the last couple of columns, you've ruled out every other answer choice, and then it's a win. Because even if you didn't know what to do with that column, it doesn't matter. It could be anything because you already figured out what the answer is. You've ruled everything else out. Not so lucky here. We have to know what the pulmonary capillary wedge pressure is. And so the pulmonary capillary wedge pressure is kind of a metric that looks at, Leah, do you know what that's, I'm going to kind of put you on the spot, but do you know what the
Okay.
kind of a proxy for with the PCWP?
It's the left atrial pressure.
Love it, exactly.
Okay, good.
It gives you
Awesome.
kind of an idea of the left side of preload, the left ventricular and systolic and diastolic pressure and systolic volume. And so oftentimes you're going to see that elevated in states of heart failure. This patient we know has OSA, he doesn't have heart failure. And so for that reason, we can say that this is actually this time going to be normal. And we can rule out an answer choice where high would be, B would be ruled out. And so after going through all of that process, you finally arrive at only one answer choice A, and you've come away with A as the correct answer. That was a
Awesome.
lot. I hope that wasn't overwhelming. Leah, do you have any kind of thoughts or anything else you want to
No, I thought that was great. I mean, I think these are the questions that sort of scare people, and it takes a lot of time. So you have to be pretty dedicated in the fact that you're going to follow this question through to the end, and you're not going to give up halfway and say, oh, I'm just going to choose one because I'm wasting too much time on this. If you're spending time on that question, everyone else is too. So it's worth it to put the time in to get this question right.